Always got to check the ingredients. And even if you are like already like trusting that brand, or you already eat other things from that brand, doesn't necessarily mean that everything else they have is good. And that's kind of like the trick.
That's very true. If you look at their ingredients back in the 1940s, sugar, salt, flour, wheat, oats, and now it's monopolysaturated, blah, blah, blah,
Oh, this study shows that intermittent fasting, if you intermittent fast for 14 or 16 hours, you're increasing your likelihoods of cardiovascular disease by 60 to 90%. I'm going, what a horseshit study.
When you have studies that suggest intermittent fasting doesn't work, why? Because there's no money to be made on that. And when you look at studies that talk about nutritional or naturopathic doctors being quack doctors, and it hasn't been regulated by the FDA, the reason why that is because the doctors and the pharmaceutical industry, they're in bed with each other. And so because of that, there's lots of money to be made by going through these processes to approve certain drugs, because billions and billions of dollars are made.
Most no one would know unless you knew, but I remember at one point I was 224 pounds. I mean, I weigh 168 pounds today as we record this.
Wow.
And that all goes down to
that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference. I'm 5'10". Like, that's a huge difference.
Yes. And I remember, Chris said, you really lost quite a bit. But I never knew you were 220, because the highest I've gotten is like 205. But now I'm typically between 169 and 174.
Maybe there's a restriction on how long you can be on Wegovy. I don't know. Because maybe some people do need it. Maybe there are certain cases where you do need it. Oh, that's right. I don't eat that shit. And I do 150 push-ups every day. And I do those things before I get, and I try to eat vegetables and fiber before I eat anything else after I break a fast. Like, you start doing these things, and then all of a sudden you go, yeah, there's really not a need to take a Wegovy shot.
So you would have the pharmaceutical industry broke because you take care of your body.
I would say we're probably within 50 years or less of being able to do whatever the hell you want to trash your body, and you're going to pop a pill and you're going to be good. So I don't think I don't think it's going to be that long-term of effect.
There's no free lunches, and the way that God designed our bodies is it's designed to exert energy, and because it exerts energy, you stay in homeostasis. You stay, you stay fit. If you treat your body that way, and if you mistreat your body is not going to treat you well long term. When I look at the execution of these ICE raids, I'm absolutely embarrassed to be an American thinking about how the world must see our country. Because the closest thing that I've seen to this, it has never happened in my lifetime, where you have a consistent and persistent tension between the law enforcement entity and its citizens. Regardless of a person's politics, whether right, left, center, whatever, a journalist has a right to operate as a journalist. Now, if an individual goes into a church like those other protesters did, and they disrupt a place of worship, those people should be held to the fullest extent of the law. I believe with my heart of hearts, they broke the law. You can't go into a church, a mosque, a synagogue, and go in and protest during the time where people are called to worship. There's a freedom of religion that's operating here too. And so when you can have freedom of expression, but when it collides with somebody's other person to exercise their freedom rights, when those two things collide, both can't be okay. We all want our kids to exercise their different freedoms based on whatever set of values they espouse to be true. And if they feel those values are being violated, they should find ways to exercise their voice.
So I tell my kids, look, don't be a vigilante. Don't. Unless you decide one day to be Batman, don't be a vigilante. Have respect. Yes, sir. Yes, madam. And if you don't agree with it and in your stomach you feel like there's something wrong, then you take it up and you escalate it. That's how things work in a democracy, in a republic. You escalate it up through the means of the proper channels, the proper judicial channels. So I tell my kids, look, don't be a vigilante. Don't. Unless you decide one day to be Batman, don't be a vigilante. Have respect. Yes, sir. Yes, madam. And if you don't agree with it and in your stomach you feel like there's something wrong, then you take it up and you escalate it. That's how things work in a democracy, in a republic. You escalate it up through the means of the proper channels, the proper judicial channels.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
If it's like, even if it's a reputable brand, right? Like for example, even if you're looking at like Atkins stuff and things like that, always got to check the ingredients. And even if you are like already like trusting that brand, or you already eat other things from that brand, doesn't necessarily mean that everything else they have is good. And that's kind of like the trick.
That's very true. That's very true. It's funny that you say that, because I saw somewhere recently where they were showing the ingredients for particular brands, like very well-known brands. Like if you look at cornflakes or any type of food that's processed, if you look at their ingredients back in the 1940s, sugar, salt, flour, wheat, oats, and now it's monopolysaturated, blah, 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 And so to your point, you're absolutely right. Reading those labels are critical.
There's an Instagram account. I don't know the name of it. I'm not going to mention it, but there's an Instagram account, and there's probably one on YouTube too, and X and all of them, and Relevant, that actually shows you, like, for example, Chips Ahoy from the 1980s, even in the packaging, and it shows you the ingredients, and then it shows you Chips Ahoy today, and then the packaging, and you look at it and you go, holy shit, man.
What just happened? Right.
And
I may have seen that same one.
You look at all of them and the ingredients are like 4X. It's just wild. The ingredients become 4X. Yeah. And not only that, the ingredients that used to be in there aren't in there anymore, or some of the stuff where it's like, you could just see the cost cutting.
Like high fructose corn syrup just took over.
Oh, yeah.
Lower costs, more addictive, and it's more potent.
Oh, yeah. And then
it's funny because when I was younger, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, when I was younger, day old bread was really a thing. Like if you didn't eat the bread or buy it from the store from that day, it's going to get moldy within 2 or 3 days. But now with all of the preservatives and the additives that are around, you can leave bread and it'll get dry before it gets moldy. That's a problem, considering that one of its main ingredients is supposed to be yeast.
Yeah. Whenever you see food,
let that sink in.
Whenever you see food that doesn't spoil like that, you're like, damn, bro, that's just wild. And they sneaked it in. Like celery salt is really like monosodium glutamate. It's just a hidden word for it. And like just the way like modified food starch or modified cornstarch spikes your blood sugar worse than sugar. Like you can eat a tablespoon of sugar and get less of a glucose spike and an insulin reaction versus if you eat like something healthy that has modified food starch or modified cornstarch in it. It's absolutely just crazy to me. And then people eat it. And then the fake crap that comes out like today is so irritating. I was watching and they put this Asian looking Harvard cardiologist on YouTube, and he's like, oh, this study shows that intermittent fasting if you intermittent fast for 14 or 16 hours, you're increasing your likelihoods of cardiovascular disease by 60 to 90%. I'm going, what a horse shit study. All of a sudden you're going to say, because why? Because intermittent fasting has become so popular now since like 2019, 2018. And all these people are doing it, having excellent health effects of it. And they're going, crap, what are we going to do? We better figure this problem out now that people are understanding that this works. And I'm thinking to myself, that is so horse crap, because people intermittent fast and ate less because of food shortages naturally and because of financial shortages to buy food. And cavemen didn't eat. Cavemen would go 3 or 4 days sometimes without eating. And then that goes contrary to the data that states, cardiovascular diseases. It's just such a bunch of crap, dude. It's just so crap to me. And then they put the stuff out there and then they go, oh, but you know what? It only looked at self-reported dieting habits for like 1 to 2 years. I'm going,
right,
bro,
right. Taking anecdotal evidence and making these vast claims, which flies in the face of how traditional research is really supposed to happen. So speaking of, and since we're talking about it, because there's no one to benefit from it more than the pharmaceutical companies. But all of a sudden, the absolute crazy rise in GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy, all of these things now where people literally, you can go on a social media style website and package up like even Weight Watchers. You can go to Weight Watchers. I don't know if you know that or not, and go and get Wegovy or GLP-1. So it's crazy that everybody is now, we're going to talk about intermittent fasting, how bad that is. But yeah, we're going to, in this stupid study, but then we're going to go and tell everybody to go get on an artificial GLP-1 so that you stop eating. So essentially you trick your body into intermittent fasting anyway, so you stop eating. You basically put yourself into a dormant step. So Len, I know you time constrict eat. I think you do. I think you intermittent fast often. I know you do water fasts. I've been fasting since 2016. I remember 2016 was when I did my first 5-day fast cleanse where I didn't do anything. I ate nothing, just water and like fiber that tasted like sawdust. It was disgusting. I'll never do that again. But what's your perspective now? Because there's a lot of good doctors and good nutritionists and dietitians that are on YouTube and out there that are legitimate, that have been saying that, talking about the benefits of fasting and talking about the benefits of, time restriction, that are totally telling you all the negative things now. And not just them, there's a lot of them in regards to the effects of taking a GLP-1 or Wegovy. But what's your perspective on it now? Since now it's just like you have a legal, way to just go be fat and then not have to do anything about it. You could just take a shot, which is what everybody's been trying to get since the 80s anyways, right? Right, exactly. Everybody wants the pill that's easy to get results. One thing that there's an old adage that's cliche, but it's still true, which is follow the money. And so when I look at what's going on with Ozempic and Wegovy, I think what's happening is that when you have studies that suggest intermittent fasting doesn't work. Why? Because there's no money to be made on that. And when you look at studies that talk about nutritional or naturopathic doctors being quack doctors and it hasn't been regulated by the FDA, the reason why that is because the doctors and the pharmaceutical industry, they're in bed with each other. And so because of that, there's lots of money to be made by going through these processes to approve certain drugs because billions and billions of dollars are made. And typically from the day a drug gets discovered, there's a 7-day window in which it takes to get tested and FDA approved. And then from there, once it's approved, then you typically have a 7-year window where they can sell it under that name until it becomes generic. Once it becomes generic, then you start to realize all of these regulations start slipping away and all of these prescriptions start to fade into the distance because they become generic. And so So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that the pharmaceutical industry feasts on the psychology of the lowest common denominator. And what I mean by that is that you have a small segment of our population that are super disciplined. You know, you give them an idea, they'll run with it and maximize that idea to its nth degree. But you have a large number of people who really want that silver bullet. They want that easy way out. And so they really feast, pun intended, on the victim mentality of give me what I want. Let me just jab myself so I don't have to worry about starving. And so what's the net negative of that? Well, the net negative of that is when I jab myself and I end up in a position where parts of my stomach starts to start dying and not, taking my food and properly digesting it. What ends up happening is that food sits there and becomes rancid. And now I start to have gut issues and now my breath starts to stink. And long term, I end up having all of these gastrointestinal issues and I start to feel nauseous all the time. And so what ends up happening is most people get off within 1 to 3 years. And then after that time period ends, then, their face, goes from being super saggy and they end up gaining much more weight than they had before. So you have all of these issues that happen. And these doctors, there are a few doctors finally that are saying, look, this is not a long-term solution because of the gastrointestinal challenges that happens inside of your body. And so many people are willing to say, you know what? Oh, that's probably those people over there. Now, because we're so desensitized, because, in Europe, you can't do pharmaceutical commercials. And I think one of the biggest issues that I have with commercials that promote these different pharmaceutical pills and all of these things is because it now desensitizes me to what the side effects are. And so now when you hear, kidney issues and liver issues and possible side effects include, nausea and potential death because of blood issues and concerns and with the gastrointestinal tract. If I'm hearing this over and over and over again, when I hear it the first time, it's like, oh my gosh, like that could happen. And then over time, we start to rationalize it. And so ultimately, Chris, I say that we need to get more naturopathic doctors into the public zeitgeist, talking about the importance of good, wholesome, proper nutrition. And we need to also make sure that we get the stories out more quickly about the negative effects that these different types of drugs cause on people, because when we don't hear about it enough, we become desensitized and we think that it'll never happen to us.
I just can't help but wonder the long-term psychological effects of continually conditioning people to think that they don't have to have self-discipline for stuff. And that's the thing that scares me the most, is because we just constantly just making it easier and easier and easier and easier and easier for people, because the real reason why you are able to either go from being and if most no one would know unless you knew, but I remember at one point I was 224 pounds. I mean, I weigh 168 pounds today as we record this.
Wow.
And that all goes down to
that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference. I'm 5'10". Like, that's a huge difference. Yeah. That's just not right. And you even knew me. You worked with me when I was that weight. Like, you didn't.
I don't remember you at 224. I would never have guessed it.
You would have never guessed it. I'm just one of those people that I don't get fat in one area. I get fat everywhere. So for me, my body, I'm wide. So I get fat everywhere. It doesn't just, a lot of guys will just get fat in their stomach, right? You see you see guys and they get this big belly and their legs are tiny, right? And that's not how it is for me.
I mean, I remember when you were heavier for sure. I definitely remember that. Yeah. And I remember when you went through your transformation, it was because I stopped seeing you every day. So I remember seeing the snapshots and I remember, Chris, you really lost quite a bit, but I never knew you were 220 because the highest I've gotten is like 205. But now I'm typically between 169 and 174.
You find what's good for you. You actually find that weight. No, it was 2014, 2015. I was at my unhealthiest I'd ever been in my life. I was just so unhealthy. I was eating like nonstop. I was eating nonstop, and I was eating crap, and I was eating late, as it was the nature of just on the road, go, no time, everything. And then I remember in that point, I was, because of business, I ended up, not doing, or I ended up changing just simply because of my schedule. And then all of a sudden I made that decision in 2017 and it all went from there. And then during COVID, I had to realign that again because COVID, it just was, you were eating crap again because you're just, again, we were in the office nonstop and it was just stuff coming like Uber Eats. I remember for like 2 or 3 years, I was an Uber Eats Platinum member because I was like, I order Uber Eats 2 or 3 times a day. And then it was like, ooh, gross. And then right around 2022, I really started, end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I really started to reevaluate everything again. And then I started, really seeing homeopathic doctors and holistic doctors and executive exams and getting into all of that. And then going, oh my God, like you can start tweaking your numbers. Like you can really look at what you like, for example, 42% or something like that of people that eat avocados, it actually is not as beneficial for them as it should be. 42%. Just like 47% of people, it's beneficial for them to eat red meat and they don't eat it. So that's finding the science of your body and finding what works for you based on genetics. And it's so simple and cost effective to do. But I can't help but wonder just the psychological effect of this. But here's why I want to turn it a little bit, because I think it's interesting to look at this because we were having this conversation about Wegovy in my household, and I was having this conversation with my kids, and I don't disagree with the fact that you could buy Wegovy. I don't. I think you ought to be able to. I think it's great. You should be, just like I think you should be able to buy cigarettes. I think you should, because that's a true choice system, right? But at the same time, you also, and that's the part we can't figure out, right? Which is, well, how do we pay for someone's compounding mistakes, right? How do we pay for the guy who's got, who's 700 pounds now and is now a social problem or a social drain? That's the problem that always gets that conundrum, because whenever the government tries to restrict something or tell you can't do something, that's where it becomes a problem. And I think that ultimately that's where the pharmaceutical industry becomes such a problem too, is because the government, anytime the government gets their hands in stuff and starts to regulate and things like that, then the government starts making money off of it. And case in point, the government allowed the cigarette companies in the 70s to put a lot of crap in the cigarettes. They allowed them to. Just like today, the government allows people to really sell organic crap, but it's really not organic. Right? Oh, it's because it fits a certain language. And that's just where you see the lawyers get in, right? Right? And that's where you see the lawyers
they exercise all the loopholes. Yeah,
let me see how to twist the language, right? And create technicalities, right? And I think that just where people need to really just look at it is just, and there's so many apps now. Like you can get an app to tell you where to eat at restaurants now where they don't do seed oils. You can get apps to tell you the best dairy. There's so many ways to do it. And I think that the problem though is that the government gets too heavily involved in these drugs, and they should just be regulating it to a sense where, is it actually killing people? Like, yes, it is, but is it criminal? Like, there's just something there where it's just, you got it. Like, I know pure libertarians look at even legalizing all drugs. I don't know where I'm at with that yet. I'm kind of more on the fence of yes, but to me, I think it's a shame because we're just allowing people to profit from it. Maybe there's a restriction on how long you can be on Wegovy. I don't know, because maybe some people do need it. Maybe there are certain cases where you do need it, but at the same time, I think about the psychological effects of not being disciplined with it. Like, I want to go eat pasta right now, but I won't eat it. I'll eat a couple bites of it, but I just won't eat it. I won't eat pasta because I'm so conditioned now in my brain, and disciplined in my brain now, Lynn, where I'm just like, I ain't eating that crap. There's just absolutely no way. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Because you get up every day and you go, damn, I just want to feel good, right? I don't want brain fog. I don't want achy joints. I don't want to be sluggish. I want to have drive. Even some days you don't want to have drive. Yes, there are some days where you're like, dang it, I just wish I didn't have such drive. I don't want to do nothing today. But at the same time, I want to get up and feel that way. And then when I look at cohorts in our age group, mid-50s, mid-40s, that complain about the stuff that they complain about, I sit sometimes and I go, dang, I must be doing something right because I don't have those problems. And then I go, oh, that's right. I don't eat that shit. And I do 150 push-ups every day. And I do those things before I get, and I try to eat vegetables and fiber before I eat anything else after I break a fast. Like you start doing these things, and then all of a sudden you go, yeah, there's really not a need to take a Wegovy shot, because I didn't need a Wegovy shot. I didn't. I could have. But now, I intermittent fasted, I calorie restricted, I low carbed. I figured out that my body does very good in a keto environment. And then I incorporate a lot of vegetables and seeds. I live off of a keto Mediterranean paleo diet is what I survive off of. And that's the key thing. Can you survive off of it on a day-to-day basis? Can you survive on it? Not just, I feel good and I'm getting the macros I need, but psychologically.
But people can't make money off of disciplined people like you.
Yes.
And eat well.
Yeah.
So you would have the pharmaceutical industry broke, because you take care of your body and you go to the doctor and you check your numbers and you eat well and you exercise and you drink water and you don't consume large amounts of alcohol and you exercise the discipline that the country has given you to make your own informed decisions as an adult, but they don't make any money off of you. And so therein lies the problem, is that if more people were like you, there'd be a lot more pharmaceutical companies in the poorhouse, because you don't make the money. Think about it. The American Heart Association, Muscular Dystrophy Association, all of these other places, they make money because they know at the end of the day, there's going to be somebody impacted. Because if there was a cure for cancer, those entities would cease to exist. And so it's really sad, man. And I hope that you really can, be a light for other people that were once living a certain way and serve as inspiration, man. And, and we need to have more examples like that, pure and simple.
But isn't that what everyone wants?
What do you think is going to be the long term? What'd you say?
I said, isn't that what everybody wants? Don't they want the utopian? Don't they want that? Isn't that what all these people are fighting in the streets for and everything right now? To have peace, love, and harmony, and nobody gets sick? Like, isn't that what we were fighting for? Like,
man, that is the ideal. But the reality, as you know, man, is we want our cake and we want to eat it too, man. And we want to stay skinny and eat the cake as well. And, you can't have both. Well, you can with Ozempic if you take some cake and then do the jab. What do you think is going to be the long-term effect of it? What do you think is going to happen 5-10 years from now?
I don't think it's going to be that negative, and here's the reason why. If we were talking about this 20 years ago, I'd say, it's going to be very negative. But I think we're at a point right now that we've reached peptide therapy and hormonal therapies and things like that are going to become so mainstream now that they're going to figure out a way to adjust this kind of stuff, where we are not too far off from being able to, I would say we're probably within 50 years or less of being able to do whatever the hell you want to trash your body, and you're going to pop a pill and you're going to be good. So I don't think I don't think it's going to be that long-term of effect. I don't.
Interesting. I disagree. I think what's going to happen is that, because my premise is that there's no free lunches, and the way that God designed our bodies is it's designed to exert energy, and because it exerts energy, you stay in homeostasis. You stay fit. If you treat your body that way, and if you mistreat your body is not going to treat you well long term. I believe, though, to your point, that there will continue to be different wonder drugs that maybe short term extend the quality of life, but I think long term, I think your body keeps the score, and no matter what you do to tweak it, we're never going to be able to completely get to the point where we can eat what we want and take something and still look good and feel good and all that. I just don't think it's going to last long.
I agree with you in that. I agree with you in that regard. I agree with you in that regard, in the fact that you're absolutely right. Yes, I think the negative side effect of it is going to be that you're going to see people that are going to be very optimized, and they're going to see people that are not optimized. And what I mean by that is, even today, you can see it. You can see it where, especially if you look at a male, especially males. Males, I think, are more, I don't want to say females aren't, but I want to say a lot of stuff today affects, we don't really see a lot of the effects, more so maybe the mental health of it on the female side of things, I think. I don't know where I'm at with that on that, but I definitely seems like more of the stuff today is deafening or is detrimental to men than it is to females. I know the underwear stuff, the polyesters, the forever chemicals are equally as bad, but I mean, like, in a sense where you see a lot, and maybe it's the mental health side of things for women, but I know for men, when you see a guy that's mid-40s or mid-50s in our age group, and you can tell if they still got it or not, meaning they still have masculine features. There are a lot of men in their 40s and in their 50s and even in their 30s today that just don't look masculine anymore. And it's not that they don't look masculine because they're not masculine. It's just that their hormonal system, their endocrine system is so screwed up from all the crap. So you're absolutely right, because, and I say this a lot too, because I used to take a ton of supplements, and as I've gotten better at it, I take it down because I want to get zinc, iron, boron, potassium, magnesium, all of these things. I want to get them, CoQ10, omega-3s. I want to get them through pathway and through metabolic pathway as much as I possibly can. As much as I possibly can. I supplement creatine heavily. I supplement beef organs heavily. And I supplement garlic, and I supplement berberine very heavily. Those are like my big heavies right now. And I've noticed that has a lot, like, I'm going to say something weird today. It was so strange. I was telling my wife today, I said, and you know me, Len, my hair has always been thin on the top since you've known me, but is my hair like growing right now? And I swear to God, I was like, this is so bizarre. And it's just, if you can optimize through metabolic pathways as much as you can, that's where you're going to see that even crazier, I think, with the advent of peptide therapy and all these things that are become mainstream, because you're going to see very crisp people, and you're going to see people that are, oh yeah, they have it, they're good, but really they're not, because they're just propping themselves up on artificial, enhancements. Because you even see it today, because when you look at people that optimize longevity therapies today, they're so crisp. They're just like, when you see a low carb eater or a keto person, you could tell they're keto. You could tell their body just looks so much more healthier, and it just looks dialed in. Women too. When women are on keto, when women are on a keto diet and high protein diet with vegetables and Mediterranean all mixed in, the women look more healthier too. Your body just looks healthier when you time constrict eat, and you eat Mediterranean, paleo, keto. It just always does. You just glow. You have different energy, your mental capacity. There's just so many benefits to it. You're right. That's the effect that you'll see long term. You'll see it'll be more of the haves and the have-nots with it, is really what it'll be.
Definitely.
In regards to health and stuff. But what obviously everyone was saying it, and I'm so glad it happened. And this is where it becomes sensational. I love it. Everyone was saying, oh, the ICE raids and all of these things. And by the way, I think Ilhan Omar is going down. Polymarket still says she's not. But here's the crazy thing about this. And we talked about this, right? We talked about this, Len, with the ICE stuff that's going on. It looks like they're starting to talk a little bit. Local governments are starting to work now, thankfully, with federal officials. And they gave some ultimatums. They said, look, if we go in there, we'll pull back, but you got to do X, Y, Z. And they gave those things, and I think they're cooperating. But Amy Klobuchar, get out of here, man. She's being brought up again. And Ilhan Omar. But here's the reality here behind all of this. They're all going down. Tim Walz, too. Because here's the thing. I said, look, I think they put Tim Walz as Kamala's running mate because they knew how deep the crap went. They knew. And the only way to cover it was to make him VP. And I said that I think back in October or November. I don't remember. It was a while ago.
I remember you saying that.
Mm-hmm. And check this out. JD Vance now polls higher than any other politician right now on the right. Tim Walz is out of politics in less than a year or in 1 year's time. And now you got Amy Klobuchar, which is a joke. It's a joke. And Ilhan Omar and all this stuff. But what I am very fortunate and happy for and grateful for is that, as we've said numerous times, and both of you are in that camp, and you stress it more, is tone it down. It feels, to me at least, that it has a little bit toned down a little bit. And things have measurably calmed down a little bit. And here's the shocker, too, to throw this in here. Because everyone out there is saying the ICE raids were a distraction from the Epstein files. And I said it. We can't release the Epstein files because there's either nothing in it or there's so many dogs in there, and there are. And we're finding out now Jay-Z's dirty habits and more of Bill Gates' dirty habits and all these people that said they weren't there, women included. They're all there. So guess the distraction wasn't the ICE raids. It wasn't, because the Epstein files are bigger news now than ICE raids, because now maybe that's why it's calmed down. I don't know. But Len, what's your take on this? ICE raids, Klobuchar, Ilhan, Omar, all that basket of just current events. It's because it all, to me, ties into each other. And maybe, just maybe, the ICE drop happened at the right time, baby. As two people get killed and ICE is doing their job legitimately, these guys, but still, where's you at with that, Len? Because there's a lot going on with that.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you and I view the world, and we view the world very similar in some ways, and in other ways, we see it completely different. And as it relates to the ICE raids, I think the way I look at it is so much different than you, and which is why these conversations are so important. And so I look at the ICE raids as an absolute outrage as it relates to the way in which it's been conducted. And so I know when you talk, and you're going to talk about the fact that, under the Obama administration, ICE was happening and all of those things. And that's true. I'll qualify that in a minute. When I look at the execution of these ICE raids, I'm absolutely embarrassed to be an American thinking about how the world must see our country. Because the closest thing that I've seen to this, it has never happened in my lifetime, where you have a consistent and persistent tension between the law enforcement entity and its citizens. I was not alive during the civil rights movements. I wasn't around when dogs were sicked on people and fire hoses were sprayed on people. I wasn't alive during that time. I've been alive many times where you have an instance where somebody is shot by police, or maybe they were wrongfully convicted by police, but there wasn't an ongoing, persistent tension. I've never experienced that. And in the last 6 months or so, I've seen more tension with my own eyes. When I say with my own eyes, where I'm alive, I'm intelligent enough to process it as an adult. I've never felt this level of tension. And it's concerning to me, Chris. It's very concerning to me. And what I hear a lot of times is, well, we're going after the criminals and we're going after the worst of the worst. And if that were true, I would be less concerned about it. And if that were true and it was being executed the right way, there would be a sense of elation right now, because people would be saying, you know what? Finally, the worst of the worst are being dealt with, and in a harsh, swift, and decisive way. So then what happens is you get these media outlets and pundits that look at the same information. And I'm not talking about you and me. I'm talking about the ones who have an agenda. Like I don't have an agenda when I talk about these things. I have a perspective. My perspective differs than yours, but I don't have an agenda. And I know that you don't have an agenda. You have a perspective, and the way you view things are viewed through that perspective. When I look at media outlets, like for example, I saw a guy on CNN, and he was talking about what happened with Don Lemon. And Don Lemon gets arrested. The judge says these cases won't ever hold up in court. And then the Department of Justice goes and has him arrested. And they say that he was there violating, certain laws that are in place. He was there clearly as a journalist. And this guy on CNN, he says, Don was there and he was roughing things up and he was causing a ruckus and he was helping to stop people from leaving out the doors. I looked at the tapes. What I saw with my own eyes through video, was him talking to the pastor. The pastor was close to him and he said, hey, please don't come close. You're getting in my space. He wasn't confrontational. He was talking to different people, getting their perspectives. And for a person to take what they saw and make that interpretation sickens me. And so that's one thing with the whole Don Lemon thing, because that happened in Minnesota. Now, I want to deal with each one at a time, because I can go on and talk for another 5 to 10 minutes about Ilhan Omar. I've got some thoughts about her. What are your thoughts about what happened with Don Lemon, man, and how he was targeted? And there was another journalist who happened to be black who was targeted as well for conducting journalism. It's just, it's unfortunate, because there were two others. I won't even bring that up because I don't want to turn this into race. I want to turn this into, we know who Don Lemon is, so we'll just talk specifically about him. What did you see? If you saw anything, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I don't think any country has any moral authority to look at the United States, given our current circumstance, and say, "Oh, we're embarrassed of that," or how embarrassing they're so children-like, or whatever. I don't feel that way anyway. And I think the true test to that, Len, is the fact that the United States of America has not had revolutions and civil wars like all these other countries, European countries have had, dictatorships like Russia, and the constant genocide that's still happening in China. So I don't think that, and the self-genocide that happens in India. And then obviously just the fact that all of South America just chooses to be ran by cartels because it's just what they choose. So I really don't think that at all, because even at America's worst, America's worst is better than any country's best, I think. That's just, and call me a patriot or call me whatever or whatever, but I mean, realistically, all you have to do is just look at the facts and the receipts. No one operates the way America does. No one can, no one ever has, no one ever will. Simply because America, as long as it holds on, provided to its Christian values, Judeo-Christian values, and its model of free market somewhat. I mean, if you want to even call it that, the Frankenstein free market that we have now. But Don Lemon Don Lemon, I think, while it's crazy because they had to go through like 3 different judges or 3 different court systems or something to get him arrested, because I think it was like all these other judges wouldn't issue a warrant. They had to go to like even an appeals court wouldn't issue a warrant to him. So that in itself is like, shows just obviously the checks and balances there, where it's like, oh my gosh, you know what's going on. But the reality is this: do I think Don Lemon needed to be arrested? No, I don't. I mean, I think it's silly that we're waiting because, and here's where I get mad about it. Don Lemon did not. We're wasting resources. Our Department of Justice is actually really, when I look at that, I go, is our Department of Justice really wasting resources on arresting this insignificant guy that's not even relevant anymore, that got fired by CNN, and now he's trying to make it big by doing some Look, he was there for theatrics. Plain and simple. The guy's doing it because he knows it'll get likes, he knows it'll get views, whatever. Was he there for journalistic value? No. I mean, a few months before that, he was actually on the streets of New York telling people that it is not illegal to come here illegally. So the guy is clearly, you can't listen to anything he says. I mean, the respect for him has dropped significantly. And I didn't think he was that bad. I really didn't. I was like, I know a lot of people don't like him, but I'm like, it's not that bad. But there are no reason for our Department of Justice, Len, to waste its time when it just dropped this Epstein list. Like, y'all should be going and figuring out what Jay-Z's doing. Like, for real. Like, y'all need to go figure out why does Nicki Minaj all of a sudden feel compelled to say that Jay-Z is committing cultish things and all these people are doing it and sacrificing children? Like, why would someone like that say these things all of a sudden? Yet they're also named in the Epstein list, which also, if you put 2 and 2 together, you can't help but wonder. I bet any reasonable person would bet their life on the fact that if they were asked the question, do you think human sacrifice was happening on Epstein Islands? I don't know, maybe. Like, there's no guess to the fact that these horrific things were happening. We all know it. We do. And that list did not need to come out simply because all of these bad things are happening. So the fact that our Department of Justice drops that list, which has some pretty damning stuff for a lot of people, especially Bill Gates. Like, I think Bill Gates is damned the most out of all of this. Like, the fact that he had to get drug tests and infected his wife with like syphilis or something, or some kind of sexual STD per what was released. Whatever was on there, right? That in itself, why are we not looking at that? Oh, because he's a billionaire, right? He's a billionaire. Don Lemon, we can easily target him, right? Waste of time when this stuff is happening. So that is a disgrace. I think it's just it's games. Because you know why? Because they did the same crap to Trump and his people. So they're just going to do the same silly games, which is just a game, right? And realistically, more people, more journalists went to jail for January 6th for just being there and reporting it and not doing anything than people doing this crap that they're happening today, I think, with what's going on. So, yeah, Don Lemon, you should have just stuck to what your peers are doing, like Megyn Kelly and everyone else and all these other people just doing podcasts and trying to actually create real value like Tucker does. And even those that are on the left, like Chris Cuomo. I talked with you about him the other day. I said, Chris Cuomo, I actually enjoy watching him now. Like, it's actually very entertaining to see Chris Cuomo. Why couldn't Don Lemon do the same thing? But I think it's atrocious. I think it's a waste of time and resources. Why would we even do this when 2 or 3 courts said no? I get it. I'm 100, but again, you got to appeal to your base, right? You got to appeal to your loyalists. And that, I think, was just appeal to loyalists. I think, Len, it's it's a waste of time.
And I agree with you in that regard. And, I have things that I agree with Don and things that I disagree with him. And I think that any journalist, here's the slippery slope and the reason why I brought up the issue. The issue that I'm talking about specifically is the issue of the free press, because a free press, especially now in the age of independent journalism, I think that the work he was doing is symbolically significant. And here's why I say that. I think that right now what's happening is cable is decreasing, independent journalism is increasing, but you see it more manifested in podcasting, where we're in our office, we're in our cozy little rooms. I think, having people out in the field and on the front line is the next iteration of independent field journalism. And I think when you have a situation where different freedoms, like freedom to the right to protest and freedom of the press and the right to bear arms, all of those things start to get cloudy, that's where the slippery slope starts to happen. And I think regardless of a person's politics, whether right, left, center, whatever, a journalist has a right to operate as a journalist. Now, if an individual goes into a church like those other protesters did and they disrupt a place of worship, those people should be held to the fullest extent of the law. I believe with my heart of hearts, they broke the law. You can't go into a church, a mosque, a synagogue, and go in and protest during the time where people are called to worship. There's a freedom of religion that's operating here too. And so when you can have freedom of expression, but when it collides with somebody's other person to exercise their freedom rights, when those two things collide, both can't be okay. And I can't be in a place of worship and expect it to be okay for somebody to come invade my space and protest regardless of what their views of my pastor are. That would, the logical equivalency would be, I'm a Christian and a group of Muslims or Jews come into my place of worship and protest my pastor for talking about Jesus is the one and only Son of God. No. Or us as Christians going in and protesting Muhammad or whatnot. That can't happen. So I say all of that to say that we have to really be very careful as a country right now to understand that we have to operate by the rule of law. And that's a social contract that we all agree upon. And when those things start to become blurred, that's a problem. For example, slippery slope. There was a tweet of Don Lemon, and it said something like, it had his picture and it said, he's been arrested when life gives you lemons, ... And it's like, coming from the White House, bro, like, why would you do that? That is so beneath the office of the president. And the moment we start to normalize that, and if we as a population accept that, then what happens when somebody that you disagree with that's in the White House now does something like that? It's not okay. And when you become a president, when you become an elected official, you've got to have some nonpartisan elements to you, because you're not just serving a part of your country. That's a recipe for disaster long term. So that's how I feel about that. And then finally, the point I want to make about these blurring of the lines is when Kristi Noem came out and talked about what Alex Preddy did moments after he was killed, she essentially said he's a domestic terrorist without doing any type of investigation. And so what's happening is you have the White House officials spinning what we see with our own eyes, and you're telling me that what I see is not what I'm really seeing. And that's a problem. Their role should be, look, we're going to let the investigations happen. Whatever happens in that investigation is going to be what we ultimately can comment on. But until then, we have no comment, and keep it moving. But when you start, labeling people domestic terrorists, and you haven't even done your research because you want to spin a situation, That's a very, very dangerous thing, because now, Chris, we start to look like other countries that do that. And we don't want to devolve into that.
Yeah, I think to your point, the respect thing is, we lost the respect thing a long time ago. I mean, on all sides. I mean, everyone's calling each other just
100%.
like the crap that Nancy Pelosi that comes out of her mouth, the crap that comes out of Schumer's mouth, the crap that came out of Biden's mouth, all of it. It's every single one of them. And this has been like happening for like a while now, right? It's been happening since I'd say like the early 2000s, where it's just, we've slowly gotten to this point where we could just satire, but there's a lot of insults and a lot of things that are happening.
Would you say, Chris, that it's been a gradual increase in that type of behavior and rhetoric? Or do you think that it's just always been around and we're just calling it out? What's your perspective on that?
No, I think I think that a lot of us have look, first of all, I think a lot of people have lost a lot of self-respect for themselves. And because of that, because we don't have a lot of self-respect
in politics,
right now,
you mean, right? Yeah.
I think it's in everything. I think it's in everything. Look, I mean, I think it's in everything.
Okay.
Look, I mean, the fact is that if a lot of us have lost a lot of self-respect, and we're not teaching self-respect, and we're not teaching basic civics and things like that. So as a result, you go out in the world and you don't respect people around you either. How could you respect someone else if you don't respect yourself? So, and then you see elected officials and you see people not respecting, like the sanctity of marriage is disrespected so many times because we see so many people that we think are famous and think that we should look up to them, that they don't respect it. So
that's a good point.
They give us there's so many bad examples, right? There's so many bad examples. And then we see a good example and then it's like, oh my God, it's just, we vilify it because, there must be something wrong there, right? There must be something. Of course there's something wrong. There's always something wrong. Everybody has skeletons. Everybody's done something wrong. Everybody has sinned. Everybody has done something.
All of us.
Right?
Absolutely.
You're lying if you haven't. And it's just disgusting if you haven't. So I don't think that when you look at Don Lemon and you look at I totally agree with the journalism. I think that's some of the best stuff. But then when you see the way like a Nick Shirley does it, and then you see a veteran like Don Lemon do it, you're like, dude, Don, you should look at the way Nick Shirley does independent journalism, because he conducts himself in a point where he's not creating riots or enticing riots or maybe you weren't doing that, but you weren't certainly doing anything to calm it down or to just report on it. You were in the thick of it. Do you think at any given time that pastor needed to talk to you or you needed to go bug him in a time of crisis? You needed to leave that guy alone so he could go lead. Furthermore, where was the pastor's staff not getting Don Lemon away from him? That's what I want to know. Like, why was that pastor not protected? Why was Don Lemon even allowed to go near him in a point of crisis? Because he's the leader ultimately. He needed to lead that situation, and he couldn't because you have Don Lemon asking pointed questions in his face and not doing anything to try. Whereas you look at someone like Nick Shirley, who is completely green, he conducted his journalism much more professional than Don did. So I think you've got to look at that and go, a lot of these guys are just actors. They're just, they're operatives, right? They're operatives for whatever that holdover, because you can't help but look back. If you go back, Len, it's so eerie. When you go back and you look at the way the Biden administration conducted itself, the media, all of those things, and all these media personalities during COVID and everything, you look at it and you would think that you're watching a movie because you're like, no way, man. It's deafening when you see how aligned all these people were with creating that narrative. So then you look at them now and they're losing power. So you can't help but think these guys are angry right now and they're doing everything they can because they're losing power. The world order is changing and they don't know what to do. And that's creating a lot of this. But I don't think we should be, and I'll throw it back over to you because we brought up Alex Preddy. I mean, I don't agree that he should have been killed. I don't. I just don't. I don't. But at the same time, after watching everything and all of it, and now that the dust is somewhat more settled, and you even heard from his ex-wife and his parents, it's not very easy to defend him, especially when you see a week or two earlier he was asking to be assaulted and he damaged the rear taillight out. He kicked you gotta really kick a taillight on a Ford Expedition pretty freaking hard to kick that sumbitch out of the back of that thing, and he did.
Yeah,
so, it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult for me to defend you. Not to say I don't feel bad for you. I don't. I pray for him and I pray for his soul. I do. But at the same time, it makes it very difficult for me to go, I'm in his camp, because I can't. I'm not in his camp at all, because, bro, you were enticing violence. And Len, if you took a can of spray paint to the Lincoln Memorial and spray painted that, screw it. If you went to the police sheriff's office right now in San Bernardino and spray painted pig on the side of that cruiser, your ass would be in jail tonight.
Sure, yeah, because I committed a crime.
He damaged government property. He damaged yours and mine's property. He kicked a taillight out of the end of an expedition, and let's say the officers didn't hear it, and they're cruising down the road, and they go to stop, and I'm behind them, and I don't see his taillight, and I crash into the back of that car and rear end and lose my life or break my neck.
Yeah,
you see what I mean? That's
yeah, totally.
That's why it's so serious to look at him. Maybe he's not a domestic terrorist, but he's a threat to democracy. Trump has done far worse or far less, and he's been labeled the threat to democracy for 7 or 8 years. So yeah, I don't think he's a domestic terrorist, but I think he's a threat to democracy and civil. And he is a civil. He is in some ways an insurrectionist, or at very least. It's fine. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not that. But maybe he's just an anarchist.
Okay, so I think this is a perfect segue. No, bro, no. Those are two different things. Okay, so this is actually a perfect segue to what we talked about, which was, approaching our kids and really empowering them with important information. And I want to preface it because I really want to hear your thoughts first, which is this. To your point, there are circumstances in Alex Preddy's death specifically, where there were off-ramps that both sides could have and should have taken. So first off-ramp. 1, we have the right to protest. We have the right to express our speech freely. We don't have the right to damage property. That's an off-ramp where you should say, you know what? Let me get off here. I'm upset. I'm escalated. Let me just take a beat. Let's get off the freeway here because my freedom of speech is getting ready to turn into damaging property. Okay. A week passes. That same guy has his phone. And you see an ICE officer engaging a lady. We talked about this last week. So the lady, I didn't hear what the lady said. I couldn't from the video ascertain any context. What I saw was the ICE agent push her violently into the snow. That ICE agent had an opportunity to take an off ramp to say, you know what? This lady is getting under my skin. You know what? Let me walk away from her. If she's not hurting anybody, if she's not damaging any property, let me just walk away from this because this could escalate really quickly. But no, he let his emotions get in the way and pushes her over. And that's when Alex stepped in. And so do I consider him an anarchist? No, because an anarchist is a person who believes there should be no system of government. Now, he might be an anarchist, but I can't tell based on the evidence that I have that that's what he believes. Do I believe that he has some issues with ICE and how they've been conducting themselves? Absolutely. He's shown evidence of that. Do I believe that he conducted himself and exercised his right to protest? Absolutely. But did he go overboard? Yes. Yes, he did. Should he have kicked out the taillights? Absolutely not. If we take that context and just put it on the shelf, let's fast forward to the situation where that ICE officer pushed that lady over. Was he doing the right thing to step in and defend her? Yes, I believe so. What is that his duty? No. Was that a chivalrous thing to do? Yes. He didn't go and rush the ICE officer. He stood in between them. And then the ICE officer started to pepper spray him. So he put himself and he turned his face around. Then they all rushed him. He ended up on the ground. And then one officer recognizes there's a gun and then they start shooting him. Bro, like there are so many situations that could have been done. And even if you look at, there was a 60-minute interview between the journalist and Rand Paul. And Rand Paul was saying with no mincing of words, like, hey, look, this should have been done in a different way. And there needs to be an independent investigation of what took place. And now you see there's a civil rights case against Alex Preddy because there clearly were some violations that took place. And so I say all of that as a preface to my question to you, Chris. We all want our kids to exercise their different freedoms based on whatever set of values they espouse to be true. And if they feel those values are being violated, they should find ways to exercise their voice, because that's what it's called to have agency. And that's what it's called to be a citizen of America, to be able to exercise those freedoms. And so for you as a parent, you have, 7 kids and they're ranging from, like 5 to 19, I think. And, you've got a lot of different dynamics. You've got a few that are getting ready to go into secondary education and into the real world. And some are transitioning to high school and some are transitioning through elementary and into middle school. What are you as a parent? How are you talking to your kids about these things? And how are you preparing them to be citizens in the United States with agency?
So, very good question. And I think it's something that everybody should be really critically thinking about. We talked about things are changing for 2026. Look, it's already a month gone, right? So we're already 30 days, right, into the year. Look, there's got to be a fundamental teaching and philosophy that you have to have respect. You have to have respect for the rule of law, and you have to go through the process. You have to, we talk a lot about due process. There's due process. They go through that due process. Here's the problem. These people are protesting against illegal actions. So they're protesting in favor of people to do things illegally. So when they go out into the streets like Alex Preddy does, he goes, well, I'm going to go protest. Okay, what are you going to protest against? Or what are you going to protest for? I'm protesting against the enforcement of the law. It's very confusing to me. And it should be confusing to a lot of people, because you look at it and you go, well, you were protesting against the law which says you shouldn't come here illegally because it's bad. Okay, great. But the reality behind it is that we all live in today's world where you can record everything. So you can step back from a safe distance and record. If you feel like there's an injustice going on, in case of Alex Preddy's situation, he didn't have to get in between those ICE agents. He didn't. Again, he has no idea what she said. He has no idea why she was pursuing him. But as soon as he got in the middle, he's now obstructing justice. And as soon as that lady got in the way of ICE, she's obstructing justice. So I don't see why everyone gets confused with that, but I do see why everyone gets confused with it. And yes, he probably was doing chivalry actions, but you shouldn't have been there getting in the way of ICE. Just like I would tell my kids, and I continue to tell my kids, look, police are there to enforce the law. Now, I think what's happened here, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's corrupt police everywhere. There's corruption everywhere. There's bad ICE agents, there's good ICE agents, there's bad protesters, there's good protesters. Do I think Alex Preddy was one of the good protesters? No, I think he was a bad protester. I think he was deliberately there to create problems. I don't, just like good was too. They were deliberately there because they were obstructing justice. They were in the way. Just like if I decided to make a lane change in front of a police officer who was pursuing somebody, and I don't know why they're pursuing them. I don't know what that person did for the cop to be chasing him, but the cop decided to light that car up. If I get in front of that cop, I now am obstructing justice, so therefore I'm probably going to get pulled over or dealt with too, and I have every right to do it. I can't question that. What I can do, though, is I could be a journalist and go, hey, that seems a little fishy. Let me record it. And then you have video evidence. You can then take that to your local internal affairs or your local politicians, and you can say, hey, look, and you can go through due process. Because everyone wants to talk about how we're not giving people due process to get them out of the country, but yet everybody doesn't want to talk about due process for law enforcement. Law enforcement's just the same as you and me. So if law enforcement is screwing up, they deserve due process too. Not for you to go become a vigilante. So I tell my kids, look, don't be a vigilante. Don't. Unless you decide one day to be Batman, don't be a vigilante. Have respect. Yes, sir. Yes, madam. And if you don't agree with it and in your stomach you feel like there's something wrong, then you take it up and you escalate it. That's how things work in a democracy, in a republic. You escalate it up through the means of the proper channels, the proper judicial channels. But see, the problem is that we have created so much crap, Len, I think, in this country, where people don't have faith in those systems anymore. And that's where our government needs to really focus on. Instead of gender reaffirming studies in foreign countries, we need to focus on how do we educate people about civics and how do we get people to actually respect and feel like they can go through these channels in the United States of America today and actually get proper recourse. That's where I think the disconnect in the system is broken. And again, the people who are so afraid of this are the people that have been writing the rules and the laws. They're the ones that are most afraid of it. Why? Because they know that those rules and laws they've been writing are really not rules and laws. They're things to enrich themselves. And that's kind of where we've gotten, unfortunately. Now, is it safe to sue? Yes, but for me in my house, everything starts in the homeland, and I wish people would really focus more on that in 2026 and stop looking outward about what everyone else is doing and what this works and what this works. And I really start looking inward and having critical conversations with yourself, your kids, your wife, your family. Say, okay, where do we want to go as a family? What do we want to do as a family? And, you know, I have a bunch of kids that range in ages. You're right. 6 to 19, all these ages. And you're absolutely right. There are some of my kids that did not get the attention that some of my kids get today. You know, my oldest kids did not get the same parenting that my youngest kids get. But I don't sit here and go, oh my God, I didn't spend time with these kids and I'm going to spoil these younger kids. I don't. The biggest question I ask myself, and we look at now as parents inside the household, is how do we prepare and parent for our kids to stick together and to rely on each other first and to be able to conversate with each other so that they stay tight with each other as a family, they don't scatter, so that they collaborate with each other, they spend time with each other, so that they actually really function like a family unit, which is you stick together, you operate together, you love together, you grieve together, you build together, you build businesses together, you succeed financially together. How do we get our kids to look at each other as not just brothers and sisters, but teammates in life, as partners? As how do we get them to continually support each other's growth, to continually hold each other accountable to when they're screwing up? How do we to be there to support them when one needs help? How to rally behind one when one's screwing up and about to fall off the deep end. I teach and we teach our kids how to be good citizens and how to stay independent with each other so that we can fix our family's problems and create prosperity so that we become a net positive for not just ourselves as a family, but the people around us in the communities we live in and we serve. That is where we educate. And I think we need more of that, because if there was a problem or vigilante going on here where we're at, my kids are not going to go run in the streets and protest. They're just not. They're not. They're going to go through their proper channels to make sure their voice is heard. So Alex Preddy, being a nurse and the influence he had, he should have been running for government civics or office if he didn't like the way ICE is, because ICE has been this way since ICE has been ICE. ICE just didn't decide to wake up on 2026 and go, we're going to be dicks. ICE has been this way forever. They have a tough job. In a moment of notice, they have to delineate or ascertain or whatever, or filter out whether or not they've got the right person or not. And then you put on top of that the fact that local law enforcement's not cooperating with them. The problem with Alex Preddy is the fact that ICE couldn't pick up the phone and call local PD and say, hey, we got someone who's harassing us. Can you come take care of them? Because they were told by Ilhan Omar and Klobuchar and Waltz to say, you don't, and the mayor, that spineless guy, don't respond to ICE's calls. That's anarchy. Our politicians were creating anarchy, which then influenced Alex Preddy to be a vigilante and be lawless. He's really not the anarchist. The government in Minnesota, Minneapolis, they're the ones who are anarchists. They are. So I teach my kids, respect it. Now, if something is happening, if civil rights are being violated, if someone's freedom is being violated, then you should step in. You should. But in this case, if law enforcement's there and you don't see something right, you don't go jump in. You report it. You go get help. You call for backup. Hey, something's not right here. What do you mean? Dude, these police officers are being rough. You go to the fire department. I don't know, go somewhere else. Go somewhere where they're not in the same department. Dude, what's going on? Go. Here's a tip for all these people that don't like law enforcement. Go call the social workers, like some states that don't have police anymore. Get the social workers to go check out the police. I'm sure these social workers have a lot of time on their hands. They can go look at the police. So I think that's kind of where the degrades there. We've got this. I just think our government, our government officials really need to take some classes in morality. And by the way, this isn't just for. There's a lot of morality that needs to be taught in the Trump administration too. But I just think that it starts in the home, and I don't think that we're teaching the right values and principles in the home. And I don't think that that's the fault either of a lot of parents, because they get a lot of BS examples. A lot of BS examples. And it's just heartening, because you're like, And I don't want my kids to be collateral damage from someone who wasn't taught right. So you owe it to your community. You owe it to your neighbors. You owe it to the rest of us to raise good kids, raise good people, good humans. Now, no one's perfect. You're going to have this. You can't, and that's the best part about living in America too, is that you're not held liable for the sins or the mistakes of your siblings or your parents or whatever. But we can at least do a good job in the home to teach our kids right from wrong, morals, ethics, values, principles, and to go do the due process, which is what the law is. And I'm just so grateful for that, because all my kids are either college bound, military bound, or entrepreneur bound. I cannot be more happy with it. But that's a testament to, again, Len, you have 2 collegiate kids. Like, you're 2 out of 2, baby. But your house was very calm and very peaceful. You created an environment for your kids to thrive. And that's, I think, where we get back to is how can we create environments and teach people today to create proper environments for our kids to thrive in.
Yeah, I completely agree with your points about what parenting should be. And I think the thing that you and I have an advantage of is that our kids have you and 2 parents in the house. And I don't fault anybody who didn't grow up with 2 parents in the house. I didn't grow up with 2 parents in the house. I have a mom that loves me. Shout out to mom, 'cause she watches all the episodes. And I have a father who loves me as well. And so
I don't want to jump in on you, Len, but I had a father up until I was 11.
Until you were 12.
So
okay.
Yeah, barely 12. I just turned 12. So yeah,
I think the foundation is set though by the time, you're 7 or 8. When you can remember a father in the house, that really matters. Now, that's not to say, because like I said, I grew up with a single mother and I was taught all of the right values and principles. And, she raised me in a godly household. And so I took what I learned and understood how to take those same principles and then raise my family with the same principles. And so I will say though, my sons are different with their mom than they are with me. There are certain things that I teach my sons and that are differently than what my wife does. And so I think there's value and importance in that. And so one of the things that we work together on, to your point earlier, is that we teach them the value of taking accountability, personal accountability and personal responsibility, and not relying on the government or outside forces to dictate where the quality of my life and the trajectory of my life is going to go. And so because of that, because they have that as a foundational principle, they're not going to look at the government or at the police or at any of these systems as something that can lift them up or hold them down. And so therefore, by definition, there's going to be a lower propensity to go out there and protest. Now, if they see that, because I remember both of my sons in their lifetimes have protested. There have been things that they've gone out and done a protest about. But we talked about it and they asked me if I thought it was a good idea. They both expressed their concerns. I said, look, follow your heart, but also if you feel convicted about it and you think that your voice needs to be heard, then go out and protest peacefully. The moment you see anything go left, you go right. And so we were very clear about those parameters. And so they came back and they told us about the protest. They told us what they saw. And overwhelmingly, it was a peaceful protest. And, it started and finished and everything was fine. What else do we talk to them about? Both of my sons are registered to vote. I don't even know if they're registered Republicans or Democrats or independents, because once you turn 18, the way in which you decide to govern yourself politically, that's your decision. Now, where I step in is I want to make sure that you have a strong Christian foundation. I insist on that. But now they're adults. They have the freedom to decide if they want to exercise their life according to that, because God himself gave us free will. And so for parents, I want to make sure that that free will is extended to them as adults. Now, when they were in my house, that's a different story. Now, so we want them to engage in voting. And, I don't tell them who to vote for. They may ask me, I say, hey, you want to learn about this proposition? Go read about it. Go look at the election pamphlet. Go YouTube it. But find ways to be an educated, person based on how you vote. Find other effective ways, and not just for the presidency, but local elections as well. And so I say all of that to say this, that as an individual, as a parent who has adult sons now, my role to them was to show them that as long as they were educated, not necessarily, they just happened to go to college, but as long as you're educated, your education doesn't stop once somebody stops telling you to go to a syllabus and read. You continue to educate yourself. You continue to learn. You continue to enrich yourself so that you don't have to put yourself in a position to have to live off the government or to be on welfare or to, find these other government assistance programs. Chart your own path. And so that's really what we've taught them to do. And, at the end of the day, we've taught them how to engage in police officers. I've talked about that in the past. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. Be nice. be cordial, be courteous. If you have no sudden movements, don't do anything to incite any fear or any backlash. And you don't have to be a punk. You don't have to, take unnecessary ridicule. But if you don't give it, you're not going to get it, more than likely. And so that's what we teach them. And so going back to the Minnesota situation, I believe in every one of those circumstances, both sides made wrong decisions. And what's happening is that both the energy that we have towards both sides' right things that they did and the wrong things they did, we should give the same level of energy to both. So, whether it's ICE for enforcing the rules or to, the protesters for exercising their right to protest. Both of them have roles in the situation, and situations that get escalated sometimes are because people start to get out of those roles, and we just have to get better at staying and keeping the guardrails in there. That's pretty much where I stand with that.
Yeah, it's, again, it brings up a point where you said, when you're talking about, law enforcement and how to deal with law enforcement. I have gone to court, fought, and gotten off with 3 tickets in the state of California. Because, again, I don't like that CHP pulled me over. I thought it was bogus. Didn't fight with it. Cool. Awesome. Dude, showed up to court and beat all 3 of them. Because, again, the due process. I could have easily done, nonsense. I'm a little bit of a hothead. But, again, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So, yeah, I think, and as you get older, you kind of start to learn. And that's what confuses me about this. This whole situation with Alex Pretis is like, dude, you had a good job. Like, you had it going, bro. Why? You felt that strongly about it. Like, you felt that strongly about it. It doesn't make any sense. But it's still not his fault, though, man. It's still not his fault for dying. And that's the thing. Like, we talked about this before. The more power you have, the more restraint you need to exercise. Because you can impose your power and dominate those people in which you encounter. And just like as parents, when we raise our kids, just because we can spank them every single time they do something bad, they can't do anything about it, doesn't mean that we should and that it's right. And so I just think that we have to get better as a country that is moving more and more dangerously into more conflict, into more internal strife. Because here's the thing, as our economic system starts to deteriorate, temperatures start to rise. And when those 2 things happen too much, too quickly, that's where the balance can snap out of balance and erupt overnight. Just because we haven't seen revolution during our lifetimes doesn't mean that it can't happen. Just because we haven't seen civil war on our shores doesn't mean that it can't happen. And I believe that many situations that happen where there's economic or cultural within one's borders, I don't know to what degree everybody saw it happening. I think it was situations start to happen, tensions start to rise, and there's one culminating event that just kicks everything off. I hope that doesn't happen, but we really need to just relax. We need to relax, man. Relax. With that being said, relax this week and have a safe week this week and a productive week this week.
I like
closing thoughts? Mine is, for me, it's simple. Just relax, man. Just take some time to enjoy the month of love. It's February. Have some. Take some time to plan your sweethearts, or if you have no sweetheart, find a new sweetheart. I don't know. There's plenty of sweethearts. Did you know the craziest stat to end with, Len? That by 2030, women between the ages of 36 and 44, more than 48% of them will be single. The highest ever in the history.
Whoa.
Of marriage demographics.
That's a lot.
Now, again, that data can be skewed.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, man.
Domiciling together. We're married, but we're not married.
Yeah,
we're true. Shacking up.
That's true. Yeah, we have to get better, because you know what, to your point is, to wrap it up, I think the tension between men and women are at an all-time high.
Yes.
I think the tension between Democrats and Republicans are at an all-time high, at least in my lifetime. I think the tension between what's perceived to be right and wrong is at an all-time high. And, I think we've got to figure out ways to become more harmonious. I'll close on a quick story, man. So there was a court session that was aired on TV, kind of like a people's court format. And there was a lady who was an influencer, and she and a guy met. He slid into her DM and he said, "Hey, let's meet." And she says, "Okay, let's do coffee." And he said, "Okay, no problem." But then the date comes up and she's like, "Oh, I can't show up. I've got this video shoot. I can't be there." He's like, "Okay, no problem." Second time they're supposed to get together to have ice cream, and she says, "Well, I'm lactose intolerant and my dad is sick, and so I really can't come." So he's like, "Okay, hey, listen, this is the second time, but no problem." Third time they get together. He says, "Hey, let's get together to have drinks." She says, "Okay, no problem." They show up. So she orders a martini, then she orders alligator, then she orders another martini, then she orders salmon, and then she orders another meal. And he's like, "Wait, what's going on?" And she's like, doing selfies and taking pictures of her food. And he's like, "I thought this was a date." And she's like, "Well, this is." And so he says, he excuses himself. He walks to the bathroom and then he ghosts her. So she sues him for $281. In the meantime, he sends her $20, said, "Hey," he had a text message, back and forth. And she says, "You're such a loser. You're so cheap." And he's like, "Look, I thought we signed up to meet over drinks," in caps. And then he says, "Look, let me send you $20. I'll pay for my drink." And so he brought that to the court, and she brought her little receipt. And the judge is like, "Young lady, you're dating to get free food. This was wrong." And so it's just a testament, because 15, 20 years ago, stuff like that would rarely happen, but you hear about this happening all the time now. And so with that being said, guys, ladies, Republicans, Democrats, let's just get along, man. Let's just find ways to be more harmonious. So in the month of February, let's find ways, because love is always more powerful than hate.
That's it. Len, have a great one. I'll see you.
You too, brother.
Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.